Okay, as promised, I said I was going to give you feedback on these fiction extract tasks that I set. So the first one was on an extract from Sabria, which is this student's example here. And then you were asked also to do a piece of work on the bookseller of Kabul, and here is a pupil example of that. I'm going to talk through why exactly I have set you these tasks. There is lots and lots of evidence to show that if you read a text and then you respond to that piece of writing creatively, so whether it's writing an imagined scene or continuing on the story or changing something about the text, doing that, the act of doing the creative writing forces you to read the text in more detail, okay? And what that then does is it makes you notice things about the text that you might not have otherwise noticed. And so the reasoning for me setting these tasks is to try to encourage you to notice what matters in the text, okay? And what I want is for everybody to move away from the technique that is sometimes quite tempting, which is to scan through a text and look for alliteration or look for a metaphor or whatever it is. And instead of doing that, what this kind of task is asking you to do is to kind of look at the text as a whole and notice what's important. So, for example, in Sabria, what was important was that you had these different narrative perspectives. You had her niece talking about her experiences, and then you had Sabria, her aunt, through her diary entry. And so, by asking you to write an imagined scene, I am getting you to delve into the thoughts and feelings of the characters, okay? So that's why I asked you to do that. And I'm not going to read through the imagined scene because I don't think it's necessary. But I am going to just read through or ask you to read through. You can pause it and read through what that made the pupil notice. So just pause your video so you can read through this. And then I'm going to show you what the next step that you're going to do today is going to be. Okay, so you should have had a chance to read through that, and you will see, I think, that doing this creative writing activity has made this student notice the things that are important. So, for example, the fact that both of these characters struggle to talk about things, okay, and picking out the evidence that makes this student think that. The fact that maybe they're quite like-minded, again, is something that you might not have necessarily noticed. This idea of Sabria being in this state of depression and anxiety definitely comes through because of the diary entry. And even this phrase here, the fact that they have used the phrase upon closer inspection shows that they are being encouraged to look at the text in more detail. Okay? The idea of the inner struggle here is being commented on. Now, I am really pleased with what this student has noticed, but the next stage is to try and turn this into slightly more kind of critical writing, okay? And I'm going to show you with another student's example what I mean by that, because what I think this student is missing at the moment is commenting. I'll put this on red. Where is your comment on the importance of the diary entry? Why is it significant that there are two narrative voices? Okay, so I like the things that they've picked out, the inner struggle, struggling to talk about things, but the big literary idea, which is what we want to talk about in English, is really about these narrative voices and also about what a diary entry is for. Okay, so we want to focus on the diary entry and also on these two narrative voices. Okay. Because that's how you're going to turn it into a slightly more critical piece of writing, okay? If we just look at the other example from another student, I think what they've done really well is to pick out in their reflection what was important. So I purposefully asked you to focus in on these burqa phrases, and then the fact that the writer then reveals the name of the woman that she has been referring to by her item of clothing, by her burqa. So again, I'd just like you to pause. This part is at the top is not necessarily as important, but the creative writing that this student did and the reflection is quite important. So I'd like you to read through those, both the creative writing and the reflection, and then I'm going to show you how you can turn that reflection into a more kind of critical piece of writing. Okay, so just pause the video and read both of those. Okay. I love the way that this student has kind of captured the atmosphere and the feeling of the text in their creative writing. But what I think is really, really impressive is the way that they have commented on the decisions that they made. Okay, so for this student, the idea of naming a woman by her item of clothing is evidence of discrimination, okay, that the women were facing. And that's quite interesting because actually lots of other reasons behind kind of using those burqa phrases were suggested. So I had one student saying that they thought that it created the kind of chaotic hustle and bustle of the market, and it kind of intensified the number of people and the number of women kind of who are wandering around the market. But for this student, it was a comment on unfairness, and I think that's really interesting because it shows that there's multiple ways of interpreting the text. But it's very important that they have picked out that naming her Shakila does make her more human, and that is clearly a purposeful shift, isn't it? The writer goes from using the word burqa over and over and over again to then humanising, like this student has said, Shakila, okay, naming her, giving her a name. And this student's done a really good job at explaining this process that she went through in her writing. So, the change of mood, for example, when she is named, because as she says, it's an important way of showing personality and character and emphasising your human rights, okay? And she is starting here to be more critical, so saying, I think the writer was trying to show the difficulties of everyday life in a country with oppressive customs and traditions. And she's starting to be critical here. The repeated use of the word burqa made me think of the inequality women face, and how much people are judged for every little thing they do. And what's really important, if we compare it to what this previous piece of work did, remember that the feedback I've given is that this person hasn't commented on the narrative voice, whereas what this student has done is to say right at the end, that there is this third person narrator's shift to naming her, and that's the kind of language you want to be focusing on. That's what's important in this text, is this shift that happens, and this student's saying that this is effective because it kind of creates a stronger sense of belonging and familiarity, and it kind of goes against, doesn't it, the stereotypes that women in burqas often face, which is that they're kind of these nameless people. Remember the horrible comments that our Prime Minister made a few years ago, calling women who wear burqas letterboxes. It can often be used, can't it, as a kind of it can be Islamophobic, can't it, the way that people talk about the burqa. So it's quite important, isn't it, that naming in this extract kind of goes against that. So the task that you're going to be doing today, which I'm going to demonstrate now, is that you are going to turn one of these reflective pieces of writing. So I don't mind if it's on the Bookseller of Kabul. It can also be on Sabriya. It's completely up to you which one. But you are going to turn this reflection into a critical paragraph, okay? Now, the difference between a reflection and a critical paragraph is that in a critical paragraph, you are going to be picking out evidence from the text, okay? You are going to be writing in a more kind of formal style. So this is almost like the equivalent of the reflection is something that you've done relatively quickly, whereas the critical paragraph is the kind of style of writing that you might use in an exam, okay? So there's a subtle difference between the two. So I am going to use lots of the phrases that this student has used in her reflection, but I'm going to try and make them now sound more kind of Englishy, okay, more suitable for, a formal style of writing, okay. So we want to start off by kind of making the overall point that we want to say. So in this extract, the writer makes the choice to shift from repeated noun phrases, so that means, the phrases that are using the word burqa, to naming the central character, Shakila. Okay, and so that's the focus of our paragraph. We're talking about this shift from repeated noun phrases using the word burqa to naming the central character, Shakila. And we're going to go with this student's analysis and interpretation. Remember, you could think differently about it. The way in which the writer repeatedly uses an item of clothing to describe the women in the market intensifies the discrimination faced by Muslim women who wear the burqa. Okay? Now, you obviously need to go back to the extract to pick out some quotations. I'm going to see if I've got it open. If I don't, then I'm just going to trust that you can do that yourselves. Yeah, I don't have the extract open at the moment, and I'm not sure where it's saved. So rather than me doing this all for you, I'm just going to write here in red, add in direct quotations from the text, okay? So if you feel like there's evidence of the kind of discrimination faced by Muslim women, for example, there's that quotation, I think, that compares them to horses not being able to kind of look either way. You could say something like that. But remember, you want to be, if you're saying that Muslim women who wear the burqa are being discriminated against, you need to look for it in the text and prove your point. And then you're going to go on, aren't you, to talk about at the end of the paragraph about how this shift to the proper noun Shakila is what makes the character appear to be more human. It's in a way, isn't it, the narrator wrestling some agency for this character. Let me change this back to black. The writer dehumanizes the characters here by removing their names, making them part of a mass crowd in a market. However, the purposeful shift that the third person narrator let's change that doesn't make sense. However, the purposeful shift that the third made by the third person narrator to using a proper noun, Shakila, to name the central character, and then we can go back to the points that this student was making, humanizes her character and gives her some agency. She is no longer a nameless burqa in the crowd of the market, but a living, breathing woman who has a story, okay? And again, I don't have the extract in front of me and I'm not sure where I've saved it, but of course you want to be referencing evidence from the text, okay? But can you see, and I know this is a very kind of swift example, but there is a big difference between the style of writing in a reflection where you are kind of being slightly more questioning, maybe you're not 100% sure, you aren't writing in a kind of critical style, and then this style of writing, which is more like writing an essay paragraph. So I want you to go back, and I'm aware that I haven't written out a full example, and partly that's because I don't want to spend ages because I don't want this video to be long, and I also can't find the original extract. So please can you make a decision now about whether you want to do your critical piece of writing on The Bookseller of Kabul or on Sabriya, and I will put instructions as well in the description box of the Show My Homework task to guide you on how to go about doing this critical paragraph, okay? But what I will do is I will put this all onto one page so that if you want to, you can pause the video now and have this to look at while you are writing, okay? Let me know if you've got any questions. I will make sure to put clear instructions so that this makes slightly more sense, okay? Thanks, take care.